Hey, what's going on, y'all? It's another episode of Film Streak, and sometimes this thing, Film Streak, it's fun because I'm getting to watch a lot of movies and talk about a lot of movies and what I think about them, and maybe how the filmmakers tried to tell their story, what their intention was, and maybe whether they were successful or not. This episode, man, this one was a little bit of a challenge because I just saw this film in the theater not too long ago, and this film, Blink Twice, written or co-written and directed by Zoe Kravitz, is pretty stunning, you know? And when the film starts, and you might even see it in like some of the trailers or the promotional stuff for it, it starts with a trigger warning. And part of me says, hey, why are we doing this? Like, it's a film, it's fiction. Maybe it's got some disturbing, some challenging, some edgy stuff going on in it. But that's a lot of films. And that's a lot of films over the course of the last 100 years. So why is this film any different? And I think maybe it's just a product of the times, which I understand. Hey, look, there's a sensitivity you have to take into account when it comes to the audience and the experiences that they may bring to viewing a film. But at the same time, part of me just pushes back against that. Because I think there's something to be said for being able to handle material, right? Whether it's pushing the boundaries, whether it's tackling very touchy or sensitive topics or subject matter. If you're old enough and responsible enough to make it to the film, to see it in a theater, I think my thought is you should be in some way or another responsible or mature enough to handle whatever comes at you. I think that's a part of the experience that has gotten lost with so many films and stories being told in other ways besides a theater. And this is me. I'm about to hop up on this soapbox about why the theatrical experience is important. You know, the way I see it is like, look, if you're going to watch a film at home and it kind of gets to you in a certain way, makes you uncomfortable, yeah, you can pause it. You can stop it. You can turn it off. And you can never finish watching it, or you can choose to ignore it actively, right? In a theater, you have no choice. I mean, you can get up and walk out, of course, but you've paid money for this. And so if you sit through an hour of a film and you decide, oh, this is too much for me, or I don't understand this, or I can't handle this, and you walk out, well, you lost out now. And I get that there's a factor of like not wanting to have wasted your money or your time on something that offends you or disturbs you. But I think that's a part of the experience. You know, you could go into a film and not be entertained at all by it, not be moved at all, not be engaged at all, and still feel the same way of like, I just wasted my time here and I wasted my money. And so that's the crapshoot that is going to see a film in the theater. Now, I get it. You know, you want to be responsible and somewhat accountable for the experience that your audience is going to have. And you don't want people to be totally turned off by what you're doing, the story you're trying to tell. But come on. I mean, there are plenty of films that I think have taken people by surprise or have pushed people's buttons. You know, there are plenty of films I've seen over the years. Some I've even seen in the last couple of years doing this podcast where I really think, man, if I had known that this was in this film, I might have steered clear. But at the same time, I might not have, because I feel like this is something that you have to kind of test your limits in a way. Like where's the line for you? And I think that is up to an individual. That is up to a viewer to decide like, this is too much for me, or this is no good. Like, I don't like this, right? For a filmmaker, and I don't even know that this was necessarily the filmmakers involved. I don't even think this was Zoe Kravitz's decision to put a trigger warning on this film because, I mean, if you look at the original title for the script when this film was in development, the film was called Pussy Island. Now, one, that throws up red flags of like, what is this film? But two, it's probably a spoiler. So I can get a couple of reasons why they would have changed the title to Blink Twice. And I think it's probably a better title in that respect of like, you don't want to give away something that is going to be a part of the film. Blink Twice it kind of implies there's some sort of danger. There's some sort of mystery, but it doesn't really tell you anything about what is going to happen in the film. When you see the film, it makes sense, but then you could see why that might tip the hand of what you're about to watch, right? Now, the trigger warning itself, it's very specific, I think, in terms of also kind of spoiling or hinting at what is in the film because it's about a very specific subject matter and I guess an experience or a traumatic sort of event that people might have lived through and might have trouble with. That's where I think, man, you're getting in the way of storytelling. And I get that it's sometimes necessary, but I feel like the trigger warning itself kind of bothers me more than the film, if that makes sense. Now, that's not to say the film is like easy breezy. The film is challenging. It has some moments in it. There are some things that happen in the film that have stuck with me in a very strange and kind of horrible way. And that's a lot of films. And I feel like that's a lot of things that you see in entertainment, you see in real life, and people have to deal with. And it's not about like just letting it go. I think the film even makes this argument. I'll tell you a little bit about the premise. Generally, it is about how people deal with traumatic experiences. That is, I think, when you boil it down, that is the core of the film. We have a young woman and her friend. They are young women who are trying to make something of their lives, but they're really struggling. They don't have a lot of money to work with. They're working like as waiters, servers, and they happen to be at this event where this tech billionaire, played by Channing Tatum, who it's hinted has had some controversy, has, I guess, in a way sort of been like canceled for some things he's done in the past. And we see him trying to turn over that new leaf and kind of make a comeback in a way. And the main character here, who I can't think of anything I've ever seen this actress in, Naomi Ackie. She plays Frida, and her friend Jess is Alia Shawkat. And they sort of have a strange, like, I guess, a fascination or an interest in this character, Slater, who, I think it's interesting that he can play so many different sides of this person, someone who's charming and a little bit like debonair and slick, but also there's a hint of something else there. There's a little bit of menace. There's a little bit of mystery. And as the film goes on, there's like danger and ferocity that I wasn't really prepared for. I don't know if I've really seen that out of Channing Tatum in a film. So when Frida and Jess, they are kind of surprise invited to his private island where he's trying to work on himself and better himself and supposedly undergoing therapy and trying to isolate from, just society really and kind of rebuild himself. That's the premise here. And so they're invited to his island on a private plane. There are a bunch of other people. There are, I guess, it seems like they're all friends except for these two young ladies. And so they're kind of just thrown into this mix and they're like caught up in the whirlwind of it all. Of like, everything is luxurious and everything is top dollar and, money is no object. And so they really just get caught up in it all. And they don't really pay attention to the details. And it's only when in this time where they're on this island where we really don't even get a sense of how long they're there. It seems like maybe it's a day or two, but it could be a week. It could be longer. The film starts to play with time in that way. Like the characters don't even know how long they've been there. We don't know how long they've been there. We don't even know everything that's happening. We're getting a sense like we're skipping time. Like we're losing things that are happening. Somehow things are happening off screen, off camera, and we're supposed to be connecting dots, but even the characters can't quite do it. So that's where the mystery starts to come in of like something is off here. And when it's kind of revealed what is actually happening, yeah, it's one of those things that it's pretty horrifying. And the first thing I thought in the moment watching the film was, oh, this kind of reminds me of Get Out in a way, where you're already set with a little bit of a certain expectation of, wait, why are these two young ladies just kind of randomly picked to go to this island? Is there some other thing going on here? And, Channing Tatum, his character is supposedly reformed and doing better and not, I don't remember if it was like actual like abuse or just harassment or just, you kind of feel like, man, maybe there's something else still going on here. All these people on this island, they're going to just kind of mock and make fun of these two poor girls. And it seems like that for a moment. But then when you start to really see what's happening, it's way worse. And, I laugh at it because it's something that it's so shocking and yet it's right there in front of you. And as soon as you start to put the pieces together, you just think, oh no, like there's a little bit of a leap you have to take. I don't know if there's a little bit of like pseudoscience involved in the premise here. But there is this, I don't know if it's like a plant or a fruit. I can't remember, but there's this perfume that all the women spray on themselves. And I don't even know if maybe it's even in the food. And somehow they are losing memory. They're like losing time. And so they kind of like black out. Like they don't remember things that have happened. And so I think you have to see the film to really understand what I'm trying to tell you that I don't want to tell you, because you have to kind of go through the experience. This is what I'm talking about. The trigger warning is like, hey, just so you know, you'll be okay. This is the stuff that you're about to see in the film. No. I'd rather go into it cold and maybe not really know, maybe have an idea, but not know how far we're going to go down the road. And that's the challenge of it sometimes. That's a challenge with any art, I think. Is this going to offend me? Is this going to engage me? Is this going to enlighten me? It might do all of those things at the same time. But let me decide that. Anyway, I don't want to say too much more about the plot of the film, other than to say there are some pretty disturbing things that happen. And it's something that, as you think about it, as you kind of sit with the premise and sit with the outcome of the film, that's the other thing. The way the film ends, it's not where I think this type of story would typically go. And that was interesting to see, because I don't know that really tracks. But I think that's also just being conditioned to expect a certain type of conclusion to this type of story. And so to see this go in a whole different way, in a way that I feel like nobody's really tried yet, I think that was pretty cool. And so it's like, this is a film worth watching, and it's worth watching intentionally. Don't just kind of put this on in the middle of the night or, on a lazy afternoon or something. Sit and watch this film and pay attention. And I think you'll see like there are some very important things. I mean, it's a thriller in a sense. It's got a little bit of comedy in it. It's got some suspense in it. But man, underneath that, there's some really big things that it's trying to tackle. And I think it's doing it pretty smartly too. I got to say, I mean, it feels very conscious of the time, of where things are in society and in culture right now, it feels very much like a Me Too or a post Me Too type of story. And I think that's important because you could have films like, what was the one I saw not too long ago? She Said, right? Which is about the real life thing with Harvey Weinstein or whatever. There was the other one from, I think, a little while back, Bombshell. It was about like, I don't know, was it Fox News or Roger Ailes or something like that? Right? There are those kinds of stories that are based in like real events and real things and real people that have, those things happen to. But there's stuff like this where I think we can kind of explore a little more by taking some license, maybe adding a little bit of, I don't know, science fiction or whatever we're calling some of the stuff going on in this film, and really push the boundaries, really get the blood moving. And I got to say, this film, it does it. It works, So my hat's off to Zoe Kravitz for really, really taking a big, bold swing here, because I think this is a film that maybe people have had ideas like this. I haven't really seen one at least done to this level, this type of story. The other film that I think it kind of reminds me of a little bit, and it's not the plot necessarily, but some of the theme of it is Promising Young Woman, which I think I talked about like in an early episode of Film Streak. And that also has some very touchy, very disturbing moments in it. And, for a person who maybe has dealt with some of those types of situations in life, in real life, yeah, I could see it. This could really set off some alarm bells and shake you, right? But I just think there's something important about being able to tell a story and not really have much of, like, let's take the guardrails out. There's something important to me about watching a film and having a sense of there's a little bit of like real danger in a way, and not like in how I'm watching it, whether I'm watching at home or I'm watching a theater. I don't want to feel like that is dangerous. I want to feel like what I'm watching and what I'm sort of experiencing on screen has a sense of danger to it. And I think for me, that's why like horror films, like traditional quote unquote horror films, they don't really do much for me anymore. And it's not because I don't think there are interesting stories or the filmmaking or the craft of it isn't interesting, but I think the things that are really scary are the things that are just possible. I mean, if you want to talk about like, aliens or zombies, come on, those things aren't really possible. Okay, maybe aliens. All right. Well, we don't know. But monsters and demons, like that stuff doesn't really scare me. It's more fascinating than anything else. How you can maybe tell a story through those types of creatures or devices. But the things themselves aren't that scary. What's more scary to me is the horrors that just basically man can inflict upon another man. Or, you know what I'm saying? Mankind can inflict upon itself. That is the more horrifying thing, because it is real and because it doesn't take much imagination to see just how devious people can be. And this film, I mean, it's like a shining example of it right now. And so, there are a lot of interesting nuggets and aspects of this film and the story and its relevance to certain things in the real world that I think make it not just interesting and kind of button pushing, but also make it really timely. So, it's just it's a little silly to me, honestly, that there's got to be trigger warnings on it. And I feel like I've seen that in a couple of other instances, whether it's films or like episodes of TV. I get it, but come on. Like, if we can't distinguish like what is fiction versus what is reality, and understand that there are certain things that are going to be in stories that might challenge us, or in any art, in music, right? We don't have trigger warnings for music, do we? Maybe that's coming. I mean, to me, isn't that what the whole rating system is for? Isn't that what the MPAA is doing here? They're supposed to kind of give us the guide, give us the meter for where our sensibilities need to be when we walk in the theater or when we turn on the film. If this is rated R, don't take it for granted. It's like, oh, it's just a little more adult. Like, take it that this could be really hard to watch. If it's rated PG, it's like, oh, I can sit here with my kids, my family, bring in the dog. We'll all watch it, you know? And I think we've kind of forgotten that in a way. And I think part of it is also maybe because of streaming. Like streaming, you kind of forget like things are still, they still have ratings. At least I do. Like I'll just put something on and it'll only occur to me like maybe halfway through a movie sometimes where I'm like, wait, what is this movie rated? Because like there's a lot of language in this and I didn't expect that. Or the other way around. And it's not that it disturbs me so much I got to turn it off or not, I can't watch it or whatever, but it's just the thing that, you know, you kind of forget, like there are measures for us to know like what this content is without so explicitly stating and maybe even kind of giving away or at least tainting the experience by saying, hey, if you've ever been through a situation like this film you're about to watch or this episode of TV you're about to watch is probably going to remind you of the worst moment of your life. Oh, okay. Well, wow. For everybody else who maybe hasn't had to deal with that, I feel like now you've kind of made this into something else now. And I don't know. I just don't know how to feel about it, you know? Is that weird? Like the trigger warning is triggering me. So anyway, I would actually be interested to know, man, this would be hard to say, I guess. I would be interested to know if a film like this with a trigger warning on it about a very specific, I don't know, topic or subject matter in the film, if that helps. Now, I would say, you know, let me know. But of course, I could understand nobody would want to do that. But it is a curiosity of like, does this actually help the experience? Or is it really just to like say, oh, now I know I'm never going to watch that? Maybe that's part of it. You know, there are some films that I've watched over the years that I have no reason to go back to. And it's not because they weren't good. I mean, like Requiem for a Dream, one of the most fascinating and in a way exciting films I've seen in forever. And yet it is so disturbing and haunting. I don't want to say it's traumatizing because it didn't traumatize me, but it sticks with you because of what the characters go through, not necessarily what you go through. Although I could see maybe that too, but seeing people go through something is also hard. I mean, I don't know if it's as hard as you going through it yourself, but it is something that pulls at you. It pulls at a thread in you of not wanting to watch that happen. I get that. And so there are films that I just, I've seen them and I've not necessarily regretted watching them, but I've come away thinking differently about something, whether it's about the story, whether it's about the filmmaker. You know, I don't know if I watched every film by Gaspar Noé, but I feel like I've seen enough, whether it's Irreversible or was it Enter the Void or Into the Void? Enter the Void. Or I talked about, what was the one I talked about here? The one with the dancers. Now I'm drawing a blank. Climax. You know, that's one that is absolutely traumatizing. It really is, because it's not, I mean, it is, you're watching a film where these characters are going through some really horrifying things, but you're also experiencing it too. Just the way the film is made, the sort of perspective that you are watching it from, you're kind of in the mix. And so you're kind of in it too. You're not watching it as objectively as maybe other films, I think. And I think that's on purpose. I think that is by design. And so that's a film that, funnily enough, I have watched it a couple of times since then. And yet there is a point in the film where I have to stop. Like I have to say, okay, I can't do the rest of this now. And so I get the idea of like a film being hard to watch and being disturbing and challenging. But, you know, that's a film. There's no trigger warning on that. And as a matter of fact, the beginning of the film gives you no clue as to what you're about to see later. You know, it starts with, I think it's like the dancers and they're just doing like these interviews on like old video tape or whatever. And then it gets into the real film and you're like, oh, whoa, this is all different now. So I don't know, this Blink Twice, it's really interesting. It's got me thinking about a lot, not just in terms of the film and what it's trying to say and what it actually does, but even just how we approach films as an audience and how maybe whether it's the filmmakers or like a studio or a distribution company, whether they have to, they feel accountable enough or they feel like it's a liability to not put disclaimers on a film before it starts, before you ever even think of watching it even. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. So I don't know. What do you think? Trigger warnings? Yes or no? Good or bad? Helpful or just a problem? I don't know. Let me know. That's all I really got for this episode, but we'll come back with some more stuff pretty soon here. In the meantime, you go to filmstreak.com. You can find other films there. You can, other films. You can find other episodes. We're at 500 films now. I've watched 500 films in all of these 100 and something episodes now. And if you want to see all those 500 films, you can go to IMDb. I have a list there. You can find it at filmstreak.com. You go to that list and you can look them up on IMDb. You can find out where they're playing, like streaming or if they're in theater still. You can add them to your own list, right? It's a handy thing to just kind of see like all the films I've talked about, but also find out where you can watch them if you want to. Hey, you know, if you're subscribed, thanks for listening. If you want to maybe get new episodes by email instead of doing like the podcast thing, you go to filmstreak.com, you can do that. And otherwise, hey, look, man, it's a lot of rain right now. So I feel like the seasons are about to change and I'm ready for the cooler weather. And I think I got something interesting coming up for October. You know, we're right now we're in September as I'm recording this. So October, I think, is going to be kind of fun. So anyway, we'll talk later. You go watch something new.